not theirs to make. Their legal guardians have that power. And the trouble is, these people feel that they have no need for a legal guardian, and many of them don't. They feel that they're perfectly capable of taking care of themselves. But how can they prove it when they have no rights? For several months, John Stossel has been investigating legal guardians. Wait till you see what he's discovered.
2 years ago, a judge declared this woman incompetent.
Who would ever think that over a medical condition, that they had robbed me of my constitutional rights and didn't tell me?
Marguerite Van Etten and many other people are stripped of rights you and I take for granted because a judge signs a paper declaring them wards of the court. It's called a guardianship agreement, and it's something you should know about because it could happen to you. It can happen to any of us who grow too feeble or forgetful, or seem to be feeble or forgetful, or who get sick or get into an accident. A judge, often without meeting you, can simply declare you incompetent and take away your civil rights. And nowhere do they have more practice at doing this than here in Florida. In fact, here in the St. Petersburg area alone, they've declared almost 4,000 people incompetent. Most are incompetent. They are older people who've become senile or who've gotten Alzheimer's disease. They just cannot take care of themselves. A relative or friend or someone at the hospital starts the process. They call probate court.
Probate, this is Marge.
Marge Mayer at the county clerk's office in Clearwater gets dozens of calls a week from people who say they know someone who needs protection.
You'd have to come into the court.
She tells them 2 psychiatrists will have to sign a report saying the person's incompetent.
And at the hearing, if everybody agrees, the judge will sign the order finding the person incompetent.
And if no friend or family member steps forward to serve as guardian, the judge appoints a public guardian. Someone like Norma Rainard, who for $20 an hour, or in some cases for free, watches out for patients at this Florida nursing home.
You look so pretty today.
She brings them cigarettes, candy, newspapers. She makes sure their bills are paid. She does things she'd like done for her should she be in need someday.
There you go. How's that?
When it works right, when good people like Norma do the caring, it's a good system. But 2020 has learned that too often the system is abused in 2 ways. Sometimes guardians steal from their wards. And sometimes competent people become, in effect, prisoners within a guardianship. That's what happened to Clarence Knight.
Clarence, did you see here in the paper today?
About 3 years ago, Norma was asked to check on Clarence and his wife, Willie Mae. Willie Mae is unable to take care of herself. But Norma was surprised to find that Clarence seemed quite competent. Norma helped Clarence get a meeting with Dr. William Halfling, a psychologist who routinely tests people for competence. Here, Halfling's interviewing Dick West, who other doctors had claimed was incompetent.
An orange and a banana are both fruit. A penny and a dime are both
coins.
Now, what were those words I asked you to?
Hand, car, 26, and was one other one.
These are standard questions used in competency tests.
Let's see, was it Bush? You don't have to be perfect on this to pass it, you know.
Yeah, tree, I think.
You got it.
After a struggle, Dick passed the tests. For Clarence, it wasn't even a struggle.
His intelligence was above average. When we asked him the usual competency questions, he answered them clearly and quickly.
I believe it because later I asked him one of the toughest standard competency questions. Can you count backward from 100 by 7?
Yeah.
Can you do that?
93, 86, 79, 72, 65, 58, 51.
If you think this is easy, try it at home.
30.
Clarence is old. He's 92, and his arthritis makes him stoop. But he's not incompetent. His mind is just fine.
9 and 2.
And his health isn't bad either. 3 times a week, Clarence rides his 3-wheeler from Clearwater to St. Petersburg and back. It's a 5-mile trip each way. So why was he declared incompetent? Well, about 3 years ago, when Clarence was living in this house, his neighbors complained about him. Among other things, they didn't like that he let the grass grow long.
Yeah.
Professional guardian George Chambers prompted the court to send 2 psychiatrists to visit him unannounced. 2 psychiatrists came to your house.
One came to the door, and he asked me a few little simple questions of how much is 6 and 7, and how much is 13 and 26, and after he asked a few questions like that, he wanted to know if he could come in. I said, no. I don't allow people in my house, no strangers. He never introduced himself or anything.
They say you were confused.
I wasn't confused any more than you or anybody else.
Now, he may have been disoriented because of a temporary vitamin deficiency, but the court simply said mental confusion and appointed Chambers' guardian on the representation of lawyer Lauren Sill. We'll hear more about her later. What happened then?
They took my checkbook and everything else, you see. Just took it over. And we went hog wild with it for 10 months.
He says they cashed in his stocks, disposed of all his possessions, and sold the house in which he and his wife had planned to spend their last years.
They do not even have a picture. They have absolutely nothing left from their life.
The guardian had put Clarence in a group home, separating him from his wife for the first time in their marriage. For many elderly people, this is how the story ends.
And they just say, okay, that's the last straw. If people think I'm useless, incompetent, crazy, or whatever, well, I'll just give up.
Clarence didn't. He got letters from doctors saying he was competent. But he says Chambers and Sill ignored them. And since Clarence was legally under their control, he had no right to ask for a new hearing. He was trapped. Why do you think he wouldn't let you out?
You want my opinion on it? He was all set to clean the house. He wanted to get money, you see. He wanted money.
Then fate intervened. Chambers had a stroke and resigned the guardianship. That's when Norma got involved and recognized the injustice. She fought to get Clarence a new hearing. Almost half a year later, she succeeded. And finally, Clarence got his freedom back. How does it feel to be free again?
Well, how would you feel?
Clarence is now putting his life back together. He's recovered most of his money, though he's suing George Chambers and Lauren Sill, claiming their actions cost him about $70,000 in lost assets. Sill says she was not responsible. I wanted to ask her and Chambers about this, but shortly after the St. Petersburg Times started investigating guardianships, Chambers killed himself. Sill is still in the guardianship business. In fact, the Times called her the queen of the guardianship system. She represents guardians for more than 400 incompetent people, far more than any other lawyer in the county. How does she have time to check after so many? Well, apparently she isn't worried. On this day, she was back in court trying to get new business.
Mrs. Green does need some significant amount of assistance in all of her activities of daily living. She needs assistance with placement. To that end, we'd ask the court to adjudicate her as being competent.
I tried to ask Sill about Clarence Knight and other cases. As supervising lawyer, she's ultimately responsible for her ward's welfare. I wonder if I can ask you about your business.
Not right now, thank you.
Was there a time when I could? Clarence isn't the only person who's complained about Sill. One of her guardians was arrested after he charged the ward for time spent visiting graves of relatives. The court papers say the ward didn't have any relatives there. Sill hired another guardian who was on probation for trying to have her husband killed. Sill doesn't want to talk about it.
The thing that upsets me most about the guardianship system is the inability of the court to monitor the situation as closely as I would like to. We just don't have the resources or the investigators.
The county's chief judge says he knows there are abuses, but there's not much he can do about it.
I don't think we'll have a problem locating
This man would agree with that. Today, John Hartman's a used car salesman in Detroit. A few years ago, he was a guardian who embezzled more than $100,000 from his ward. Let's hear it from the side of the crook.
I was working in a tavern as a maintenance man, janitorial. Saw an ad in the paper for a public guardian. I had no idea what a public guardian even was, but it sounded interesting. I applied for it.
He was hired, and the court assigned him people to protect. The first thing you do would be check out their estate.
Go to their home, their apartment, wherever they lived, inventory their assets that were there.
This is standard procedure. In fact, here's an honest guardian doing it. The woman who used to live here had a stroke. Now she's in a group home. Guardian Irene Rausch got the house key from a neighbor.
When I come into a house, that's one of my ward's houses, I always feel like an intruder. And it very much bothers me that I'm invading their privacy.
She looks everywhere.
Underneath the cushions, behind the furniture, any place you can look.
People hide things in books, so she checks every single page.
Oh, here's something interesting. Deposit for Crossland Savings. Balance.
$11,000. Isn't this an opportunity for a thief?
Some guardians have made upwards of $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. There actually is no checking up to see if the bank balance that we are showing is actually the bank balance. We could fabricate any amount, and as long as it's balanced on paper, nobody is going to check on it.
You stole about $180,000.
Well, if you want to use the word stole, that's fine.
What word would you use?
You can use it.
What word would you use?
The true word and my true charge was misappropriation.
He says he's talking to us because he hopes to deter other people from doing what he did. He says the courts won't deter them. You think you could get away with this again?
Absolutely.
There's just nobody...
There's no supervision. There's no check and balances in existence to stop it.
Now, so far, you've heard about people victimized by public guardians, by strangers appointed by the court. But often it's your own family that moves to take your rights away. Marguerite Van Etten has achieved a lot in her life, including several advanced degrees.
And this is Nova University when I got my master's in behavioral science human services.
How old were you when you got that?
60 years old. And I work full-time.
She's a professional dietitian and a better cook than most people. She can do more on computers than I can do. She is 66 years old, but she's certainly competent. But 4 years ago, she had a car accident.
Now, right here is where it happened, at this intersection. I was making a left-hand turn right there. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital, and I didn't...
It was a serious accident. She was in this hospital for several months. During that time, Marguerite's daughter got the court to declare Marguerite incompetent and to name the daughter guardian. When the hospital released Marguerite, her daughter's family brought her to their house in Maryland. Only then did Marguerite learn that she'd been declared incompetent and what that meant. It started when she asked to see her complete financial statement.
She said, I don't have to put up with the likes of you. I can put you in a nursing home for the rest of your life.
Her daughter denies ever saying that. She says she only took her mother to Maryland to take better care of her. It sounds almost as if the person was your prisoner, that if you didn't want them to, they couldn't get out of the guardianship agreement, that you could keep them in your prison.
After being a prisoner myself, I would say you are 100% correct.
Suppose they got better. Couldn't they just go to the court and say, Judge, I'm okay?
If they were mobile to, if they didn't live in a nursing home. But as long as you can limit their access, you've got them.
Jane Dietrich has limited access. 84 years old and wealthy, she'd become ill and temporarily disoriented after the death of her husband. Her daughters first asked her to come live with them, but when she refused, they felt they had no choice but to have her declared incompetent and put into a nursing home.
They think I'm spending all the money and that I will be influenced by somebody to get my money away from me.
Marguerite says money may have been the issue in her case, too. Why do you think your daughter did this? She wanted your money?
Maybe not her. It may have been a combination of 1, 2, or 3 people that felt that they'd be better off with what I had because they didn't have a lot of money.
Marguerite and Jane's children say money had nothing to do with it. They just wanted to protect their mothers. Marguerite fought this protection. Against her daughter's wishes, she returned to Florida.
First thing I did was try to get my competency back. I went to the law library at the courthouse, did research there. I researched the guardianship laws. It took a long time.
A long time and lots of money. To get that, she had to beg her guardian's lawyer.
And you think I sent it on to take a cab to go to his office to get my money? Ooh.
It took her months to get the court to release her from the guardianship.
Why is it so hard to do it quickly? It's not easy to get back into the court. You have to wait your turn.
Jane Dietrich is still fighting for her freedom. In the meantime, she's lost her house. This glorious house used to be her home, but the Guardians sold it.
It is a gift shop and restaurant. And they sold all the old family furniture that had gone across the country in a covered wagon.
Congress recently held hearings on this subject. People testified that guardianship laws are ill-conceived. In some states, just being old can be used against you.
33 states allow advanced age. I wonder if they get me. I'm 87. I have to be on the alert if somebody doesn't go in my absence and has to have a guardian appointed me. Oh, he's an old man, 87 years old.
Congressman Pepper is now working on a national Bill of Rights for adults facing guardianship. Maybe it would help Jane Dietrich, the administrator of her nursing home, who's seen her every day for the past year, says she's recovered mentally and would function well on the outside with some financial and medical assistance.
In my opinion, as administrator for 13 years, I feel that Jane Dietrich's competency is not in question and should be restored to her.
Doctors who've examined her are divided on this issue, and with no consensus, the benefit of the doubt doesn't go to Jane. As of tonight, she's still a ward of the court.
I feel like a prisoner most of the time because I can't do what I want to do.
It seems so wrong that they can take her rights away, and the burden of proof is on her to prove that she's okay, and not on them the other way around.
We chafe under the law's delays, and yet it doesn't seem to take much delay in getting somebody committed if it's deemed that they're not responsible. Why does it take so long to restore somebody's independence if they are responsible?
Up to half a year in some cases. As the one judge says, you know, it's the court system. They're overburdened already. Congressman Pepper's bill, which he's proposing next week, would provide more protection, but it would also mean more lawyers, more bureaucracy. It would be tougher for all the good guardians who are taking good care of people.